Good evening, folks. Welcome to Skeptic Haven. My name is Eric. I am from a channel called Skeptics and Scoundrels, and I have the honor tonight of hosting the show. Normally there's an intro. I didn't have one tonight. I'm a little shocked, but that's okay. It's great to have everybody here or anybody who's going to be watching this in the future. Again, my name is Eric, and I will be your host tonight. Tonight we have a really nice special episode. We're going to have somebody in here who is an Assyrianologist. He's an expert on Hebrew language. He's written books on the topic of slavery in the Old Testament. And yeah, we're going to have a pretty good conversation tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about his work, his studies, and maybe take a call or two. We get some folks calling in. But first, before we start with that, again, this is Skeptic Haven, live call-in show. You can see the number up here. The number is 984-789-4787, or you can go down here to join via a web browser if you want to join the conversation or talk to us or have questions. And yeah, that's going to be our evening. So if that's it, I guess, SR, you want to bring in Josh and we'll say hi?
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.
That's how the intro works. I was like, I think last time the intro video just started when the stream started, and then some came in. I guess we're gonna now have like a preamble lead up and everything like that. So next time.
It's all a journey.
Next time. Yeah. So good evening, Dr. Josh Bowen. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show. Just for anybody listening, I've been told numerous times that I have this very similar voice to Dr. Josh Bowen. So hopefully you guys are watching the screen and actually being able to differentiate between the two of us.
I'm so sorry, Eric.
I know, but it's okay. You're dressed way snazzier than I am. So I think people should just watch just for the very sharp. Yeah, I got a vest, bow tie. Yeah, that's great. Nice full luscious beard. It's like, yeah. I told Josh before the stream, I have a coworker. His name is Tom, and right now Josh is the spitting image Tom. Like he's doppelganger level similarities. I'm
poor guy.
Yeah, I have another week of PTO, pay time off, so I've returned to work next Monday. I'm about to show Tom like, hey Tom, check out the stream that I was on. I was on with you, and I'll be like, what? And then he'll see. So we'll see what happens.
Nice.
Yeah. So, Dr. Bowen, how are you doing tonight? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background. Just kind of give us a little bit of an intro about you and your work.
Sure. So thank you for having me on. And Eric, this is going to be, I think it should be a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll get some people to bring that smoke, That's what I'm
absolutely.
looking for. So I am Joshua Bowen. I have a PhD in Ancient Near Eastern Studies from Johns Hopkins University. While I was there, I majored in the area of what's called Assyriology. So that is the study of the languages and cultures of ancient Iraq and Syria. So what that means more specifically is from the history from about 3000 to 300 BCE in Iraq, in the area of the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, just northwest of the Persian Gulf. That was my area. So I know Akkadian and I know Sumerian. Those were my languages of specialization. In addition to that, which sort of leads, it was a nice tie-in. I spent 6 years in grad school, in seminary, getting a master's of theology, where I focused in on Hebrew and the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. So I've taken, I don't know, probably 10 years of formal training in Hebrew and 6 years in Koine Greek. I took formal classes in Biblical Aramaic and Targumic Aramaic and blah, blah, blah. So, so I have a lot of exposure to the Hebrew Bible. I have degrees in it. And so that, and I minored in it when I was at Hopkins. So all of that to sort of tie together with what I do online. I'm sort of a counter-apologetics guy. I was a fundamentalist evangelical for 25 years and then deconverted. So now I kind of spend time online as a bit of a fact checker, I guess, when it comes to the Bible in the ancient Near East.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my role, I think.
I imagine, knowing so many ancient languages and being very familiar with the time period in which a lot of the Old Testament was written, you probably have a lot of unique and probably far more accurate insights into the writings and the context of the writings than most people, your laymen, might have. You're most most your theists, your Christians, your Jews. Like you probably have a bit of a better understanding about those previous texts, probably than the most average person. Would you say?
Yeah, probably. And what's nice, I think, about it is I also know a lot of people in the field.
Yeah.
So this is really the thing that lets me sleep very easy at night. Is whenever I come out with a video and I say something like like tonight, the Old Testament very clearly endorsed the practice of the social institution of slavery. That's the consensus position in academia, right?
Yeah.
Just so. How we define endorse theory, and we can talk about that, but that's the consensus. So the positions that I hold on what these biblical texts say is just what everybody says.
Yeah.
So when apologists get all up in arms about it, Dr. Josh is just he's got a devil, whatever.
Yeah.
He just hates God, and I guess I'll inform the rest of scholarship that's why they think it too. So
yeah. I've noticed that. I mean, I've run into a few people who try to claim that no, there was no slavery legislated in the Bible or put forward in the Bible. But a majority of the theists that I've talked to, Christian theists, tend to say, yes, it was slavery, but, and then, go into reasons why it wasn't as bad as antebellum slavery, or just calling it just wholesale indentured servitude, and kind of missing out or purposefully ignoring a lot of the nuance that's in there. And in fact, I got your book right here. So this is the first edition, folks. But Dr. Josh has a second edition out. So you can get focused here. Did the Old Testament endorse slavery? And so this is the first edition, and
There's
the second edition is right there. It is 3 times as large as this book. So
I don't know what that says about me.
Well, it shows that you when you made your first pass at this, and you're like, hey, you know what? There's a lot more we can add to it.
Well, I mean, that's the crazy thing about this journey, because I started talking about this, I think, in 2018 or 2019. And I really thought it was going to be something that was like, you hear all these debates and discussions where apologists are saying, no, it's not real slavery, or it's not slavery, there is no slavery, whatever.
Yeah.
And I just thought, okay, well, they just don't know, right? So I'm going to go and I'm going to point these passages out, and I'm going to say, look, here's debt and chattel slavery very clearly. And they're going to say, oh my gosh, I didn't know, I'm going to have to rethink all this. And some of them have said that, most of them have not. Many will say, oh, I guess maybe slavery isn't immoral then.
Yeah, that's the next step.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's like kind of that's like the perpetual retreat. It goes from the Bible didn't endorse slavery to, oh, it did, but it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. Oh, it legislates how much you can beat them and how you can own certain slaves forever, and women and children and war captives. And like, oh, okay, well, because those are indisputably listed in the Bible. I believe in your book, in the first intro of your book, the first chapter of your book, you talk about scholarly consensus and how it's established by finding concrete data points that everybody can agree with by just strict literal reading of the text. Like, yep, it says right there how much you can beat your slave. Yep, it says right there that the female slaves are owned forever, at least in certain contexts. Undisputable data points. And so once those are established and you build a plausible explanation around the data points that you have, then the next logical retreat is, okay, fine, it's all there, but it's okay because such and such God, he owns, he can do whatever he wants with you, or he was, I've heard from one person that he purposefully legislated slavery to keep it from being as bad as it would have been had no God been involved.
That's
or
right.
He was like restricted by the flaws of humanity or the times, and which, it's like, and that's, now we're in like problem of evil, problem of suffering territory. It's like, well, why couldn't your almighty, all knowing, all loving God come up with a better solution? Like
Yeah.
maybe just simply saying, hey, no slaves. And if somebody's hungry or in debt, I'll make manna rain from the sky and just feed everybody perpetually, like he did
Right.
that
He's
one
done that.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
like
done that.
yeah, he could just hand out free food, like he's done at least 2 occasions in the Bible. Once in the New Testament, once in the Old Testament. It's like a God, and here's where I should probably call out to any theists calling or in the audience. Feel free to call in. We have a number up in the corner. We have a URL down there. Talk to us about this. Tell us your insights on it. Do you think you have a good justification for why slavery should be given a pass in the Bible or anything like that? We have an expert here in the text. I, on the other hand, am unburdened by credentials, but I'm willing to talk about this kind of stuff. So yeah, call in. Like I said, we got a professional here and we got me. So we would love to hear from you and see what you have to say about this. But just all the rationalizations and all of the mental pretzels that people will bend themselves into just to make this work, because it has to work, because this is their God's word, and their God is obviously the mightiest and the smartest and the goodest. And whenever that's threatened, you see like all this stuff go on, and I was not entirely like that when I was a Christian. For some reason, my brain just glossed over, like, oh, slavery, okay, we don't do that anymore. And then that's as deep as I thought about the topic back when I was a Christian. I'm curious if I was, kind of more attentive in my Bible reading and such, and I'd actually like read that and really thought about, what is it like to own a person, limit their freedoms, claim that they owe you their time and work, or you just simply own them outright. And then you're like, oh, you're disobeying me, I'm going to beat you now. And as long as I don't beat you within, if within a couple days you can get up and move around, you're fine, then I'm off the hook. Like if I had thought deeper about just kind of the moral implications of that and kind of the horrors of it, I'm wondering what I would have done to try to rationalize that. What would I have said to myself or said to others to figure that out?
That's what's so frightening, I think, about this mindset is that, I'm sure maybe people listening have heard me say this elsewhere, but sort of the way that I describe my former life as a Christian is that I was the kindest, gentlest, sweetest bigot that you would ever meet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I 100% can see myself. Yeah. I always give this example with the show Monk, but if you've seen the show Monk, and by the way, Eric, if somebody calls in or something, just say, all right, Josh, that's enough.
No worries. We do have one person on the line, Carson.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to you here in a moment, Carson, but go ahead, Josh, finish your...
I was just going to say that if people that watch television shows, they anticipate that there's going to be this problem that arises, right? And it's going to, like in the show Monk or in a detective show like that, you expect that the most unlikely person is going to commit the crime.
Yeah.
And the brilliant detective is going to be the one to figure it out.
Yeah.
And
because that makes good TV. Yeah.
That's right. And so when Monk says, oh, the guy that was in outer space at the time of the murder did it, well, like you he's right. So all you need at that point is a possibility. It's all you need is a possibility. And I think the exact same thing is true when it comes to this view of infallibility and inspiration of the biblical text, is that if you know that God is perfectly moral and perfectly just, and that these texts are perfect and historically reliable, then it must be the case that God had a good moral reason for doing so. You just have to, what's that possibility that I can come up with?
There's some path through that quagmire that's like, oh, right. now everything makes sense. Okay, we were all completely wrong to have any doubts. Yeah, I know what you mean. And we'll continue that point after we take our call here. So let's bring in Carson. Carson, welcome to the show. Carson is an agnostic, he, him pronouns. Carson is in Michigan. So man, it must be getting pretty cold over there. Over here in Seattle, it's like 25 degrees Fahrenheit today. It was pretty chilly. But yeah,
hello.
Hey,
Am
Carson.
I live?
Yeah, you're live. Let me read out your topic here, and then we'll let you introduce yourself. So the note here says you're asking the question: are there other ancient Near Eastern cultures that also had similar practices of slavery at the time that could justify the Israelite text? So Hi, Carson. How you doing? Feel free to elaborate on your question and ask Dr. Bowen for an answer. Carson?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, I'm doing pretty good. And yeah, it is really cold here. I think we're going to have a high of like 7 tomorrow. So
Oof.
yeah, great stuff. But yeah, I just, one common response I hear is when talking to apologists, Catholics, whoever is, well, slavery was necessary for the Israelite economy. They couldn't have just, abolished it all in one fell swoop because it would have like destroyed their economy. They would have had, whatever, no recourse to farming and trading, whatever. And I was just wondering if there's like any other ancient Near Eastern cultures we could compare that to that maybe didn't rely on slavery as much, or just kind of prove that, it would have been fine if they, if God had outlawed it or something. If you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question, and so I can say that the areas, the geographic and chronological periods of those geographical regions that I studied, it is pretty common, right? It's pretty consistent. Egypt, and it's not my area of specialization, so I'd want to direct you to somebody like Maggie Bryson, who is an Egyptologist, or Joe Waller. But it seems like Egypt didn't have as much slavery, ironically, given what we see in the biblical text. But again, I'd want to defer to the specialists there. But I think there's a bigger problem here for an apologist that's making that argument. And your approach is a great one. And like if we dig down into Egyptian slavery and find that they didn't really use it, it did seem to be diminishing, as I recall. But that would be a really good case to make. But I think there's a really big problem with this argument that God was in some way restrained by the economic system. And that is that the entirety, really, of what we see in places like Deuteronomy 15 and Leviticus 25, and just more broadly throughout Leviticus 25 and 26 and Deuteronomy 28, these places that talk about slavery, but then talk about what God would do if the people obeyed or disobeyed him and his laws, is he consistently talks about supernatural provision if they obey him. And the supernatural provision that he provides would have been astonishing to them and to us. So for example, in Leviticus 25, the chapter that has the infamous chattel slavery 3 verses in 44 to 46, you see Yahweh through Moses telling the people, every 7th year let the land lie fallow, right? Don't sow and don't gather, just let it lie fallow, which seems crazy, right? Because, well, wait a minute, what are we going to eat, right? Is the response. And he says, I will provide for you supernaturally so that you in the 6th year will reap enough for 3 years, right? So the point is that when God says, obey my commands, in 2 passages that have slave laws in them, one of them speaking directly to slave laws in Deuteronomy 15 and the supernatural provision thereby, he says, I will supernaturally provide in a way that would have been, problematic to their economy, right? To their way of eating. So if you look, and I'll be quiet, but if you look at Deuteronomy 15, it says, keep your slave for 6 years, release him in the 7th, just like you see in Exodus 21. And like the passage talks about that God would bless them if they would obey, so much so that like part of the thing they were supposed to do in Deuteronomy 15 was to release a slave with tons of provisions and give them all kinds of goods so that when they left, they'd be able to start over, having been in slavery for 6 years. And the purpose there was not strictly like a humanitarian one. It was trying to ensure that the citizenry in Israel, according to the Deuteronomist, would maintain this high status amongst the other nations. So if you have a bunch of poor people in your country, that's no good. It doesn't work well. So, but that the text says, don't think to yourself, well, how am I going to do that, right? How am I going to keep him for 6 years to have him repay a debt, only to turn around and give him a whole bunch of stuff when he leaves? He says, I will bless you. I'll bless you in the field. I'll bless you in your coming and your going. Like I will take care of all of that. So I think there's a really big problem here with this idea that God couldn't intervene to say, all right, look, I don't want you to do slavery anymore, right? I don't want you to do it anymore. And I know, don't say in your heart, well, how will our economy continue? Because I will supernaturally provide as a sign to the nations that you should not be owning people, as that is an immoral thing. And I will supernaturally provide for your economy as a sign to the nations, right? That would have been, man, that would have been a mic drop. That would have been knockout. And this is the last thing, and then I will stop talking. Sorry. And that is that in Leviticus 25, this later passage, compared to Exodus 21 and Deuteronomy 15, God does say, don't keep Israelites as slaves, right? So in Exodus 21, you can keep them as slaves. Deuteronomy 15, you can keep them as slaves. Leviticus 25, no more. You can't do it, right? So he can tell people, don't keep people as property. He can do it. He did it. It's just for his own people, right? If you want them, you got to get them from the foreigner. So those are some major hurdles that I think an apologist has to get over with that argument.
I like how some of the
fantastic. I mean, I completely agree, and I don't know if you'd agree with this either, but it's just like I've seen some other videos where you've talked about this, and it just seems like the prescriptions, like especially there was one like about what to do if you like see like an attractive like enemy female or something that you want to take as a slave. Like they're so detailed and like so minute. It's like if this was just for the economy, you wouldn't think they would go in like such ridiculous like depth. I don't know. It just seems odd to me.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I completely lost the point I was going to make.
All right. Well, cool. Yeah. Thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate it. You guys have a good rest of your night, and I'll stay tuned for the stream.
You too. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Carson. Appreciate it.
It's that delay. That's all it is.
Yeah, Colin Studio's not the greatest because like Josh and I are on StreamYard, which is good because we have like nearly instantaneous transaction between our two computers. But yeah, when Colin Studio's in there, there's a little bit of a delay. So I completely lost the point I was going to make, but it's fine. I'm pretty sure you covered it already. One thing I did like about your book was that I think that was what I was going to mention to Carson is that in your book you actually, I think in your chapter 2 of your first edition, you do bring up like, okay, chapter 1 is about, okay, what are those data points? What are the kind of the indisputable facts about the literary text, the Hebrew scriptures that we can establish consensus on, scholarly consensus. These are like kind of indisputable and can't really be moved because they are literally written in the text. Chapter 1 establishes those like nice and like cold, plain facts to start building a case off of. And then your second chapter, I believe, is the one that goes into, okay, now what is the context in which these books were written? What is the surrounding in the Near East? What were the surrounding laws from the different eras? Point out the fact that even though it's a large swath of time, we're talking about thousands of years, we know for the most part that things didn't change all that much. We see much greater change in our laws and our rules today because we have such a rapidly advancing society, thanks mostly to technology and rapid communication between nations and such. But back then it was much, much slower. So we have a good record, like original documents in many cases about, like certain laws or certain, court like decrees and various things that kind of paint the picture of, what's the overarching atmosphere in which the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, was written. Do you have any like things about that time period that you think are like really key to helping people understand exactly, what was going on back then and why the Hebrew Bible was influenced by them?
Sure. I mean, very broadly speaking, the Hebrew Bible is a product of its time, right? So if a text is being composed during the first millennium BCE, during the reigns of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, and then later the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and then later the Persian Empire, And then there's probably stuff being done, although we're starting to leave my area here, but there's probably stuff being done during the Hellenistic period as well. But the point is that these cultures were the dominant cultures. And when you read, particularly books like Deuteronomy, you kind of walk away with this feeling of, gosh, the writers were either anticipating a time or they were, hoping for a time when they would have this position of supremacy over the other nations. And so it's actually very much framed that way.
Mhm.
So if the passage that we were talking about earlier in, I think, God was talking about Deuteronomy 21, 10-14 with the captive bride. This is in the context of, all right, Israel, when you go to war, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to all these nations that are outside of the land of Canaan. You're going to offer them vassalage. If they agree, great, they become your vassals. You can extract corvée labor from them.
Mhm.
But if they put up a fight, then you emasculate the entire city, take the women, the children, property, all as your plunder. And this is a view of power and dominance. Of course, the reality was that Judah was a backwater, essentially, right? And then Israel, down until 722, the late 8th century, was the more dominant of the two, but certainly was not like, this great power that was going to fight off the Neo-Assyrian Empire or something. And so because of that, there is a lot of cultural influence. And I think this is why we see in several places in the Hebrew Bible the writers polemicizing against the people that were the powers in the region. Interestingly enough, though, of course, we always talk about this, and I think Dan McLeod has popularized it, but it's something that it's stuff that we say in the field. Like, there isn't this univocality in the Hebrew Bible that we all, when we were Christians, assumed, and like Dan uses it beautifully when he talks about it, right? And but there isn't this like single voice where you can read a single theological position on something.
Yeah.
So when you ask, what does the Hebrew Bible say about X, that's a question that's complicated because like what depends on where you look.
Yeah.
And so there are obviously, I think, places where there are polemics against like the Neo-Assyrian Empire, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. But there's scholars going to be coming on soon. I think he's out of Michigan now that Megan's going to interview on the channel. And he's writing a book now on how he thinks that a text that he's working with is actually working to reinforce a Neo-Assyrian dominance in the Hebrew Bible. It's written in support of that, which is like a very sort of Josephus sort of thing to do, right? You're writing this thing to like make the people that you would expect to be your enemies, like, sort of reinforce that, but in a way that's palatable. And anyway, not that I'm a Josephus guy, but anyway, it is really interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
You made a good comment there. Is that the Hebrew text, the Hebrew scriptures, was written over a large amount of time by numerous different authors, different perspectives, different regions of the Near East, and as a believer, at least myself, and I think it's probably generally true for most people, as a believer, you look at that and you go, oh, this is a unified text. This has a unified theme. And having that mindset before you read it can really influence your perception of the text, your understanding of the text in ways that will kind of stray you off of, I don't know, I guess I don't call it like the accurate path, but just kind of more of an objective understanding of the scriptures. There's a saying in scholarship is to let the text speak for itself. If you come in there and you are bringing in your preconceived notions of, okay, there's a theme here that I have to shoehorn this text into, or there's, this was obviously directed by one God. So obviously there's some type of, mystery here that leads to some type of truth, which causes a lot of people to do these like mental gymnastics and such to make these things work. And I appreciate it since deconverting and then now looking at these texts. I appreciate the it's going to sound kind of pretentious, but it's intellectual agility in reading these things, because I'm no longer bound to certain rules of interpretation. I'm no longer bound to my theology. I'm now just simply looking at the text and going, okay, what did this guy at this point in this part of the world have to say with these blocks of text?
Yep.
And then you can look at that, and you can, and as you mentioned, like in Deuteronomy, there was like you get a feel of a, like, hey, we're going to start gaining power here, and we're going to, show those other nations, give them their comeuppance, and you can feel that in the text. And the same thing, like, we're outside of the scope of this conversation, but like in the Gospels, you can see in the Gospels how each gospel kind of has like an objective. Like Matthew has its own objective, Mark has his own objective, John was like way out there with, okay, we need to really, like, the previous gospels weren't really focusing on that Jesus is God, but then John comes by and goes, yeah, we need to like solidly enforce that Jesus is God. So you can kind of see how, like, even in that short period of time, several decades, we saw how the story changed, the objective kind of changed in just those few decades. And then now we're looking at the, Hebrew text, hundreds of years between when some of these were written, and just the objectives are different. And if you can see that, it helps you give a better understanding of what's going on there, untainted and uninfluenced by any type of like third party objective or agenda, like, perhaps your pastors or your religions. As an ex Jehovah's Witness, that was a huge thing that I had influencing my thinking, and I didn't even realize it. Like, they're basically giving me the answer first, and then saying, now go into the text and reinforce that answer with what you read. And that's not really I look back and I go, oh man, how could I have been so blind? But, I was born into the religion. I wasn't taught any better. It's only something I learned after I left. And when I speak to theists who want to come in and say, hey, this is all justified and everything, God's okay with slavery, or slavery's okay because God said it so. I try to treat them with that same kindness I would have treated myself. Like, okay, maybe you haven't thought about it in quite this way. But anyway, if anybody who wants to call in, who are like, I don't want these guys to eat me alive, or we're very nice guys, we're just going to have a discussion. It's not going to be like over on the line or anything like that. As fun as that is, and as fun as it is to get into that blood sport and pugilism, we're over here, we're having a nice, calm conversation. We do have another caller though. Let's bring in somebody here. Okay, let's see what this is about. Okay, this caller's name is Ricardo. In quotes here, I am God. You're in California, and your question is, can AI believe in God? So, Ricardo, are you there? Ricardo might be waiting for ChatGPT to tell him what to say. Oh, hey, okay. Ricardo, hey, how you doing?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. We hear you.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. I'm
doing great. I'm just here watching on my screen.
There's a substantial delay between me talking and you hearing, so we're gonna have to kind of work around that. Calling studio is not the greatest, so I will give you a wide berth.
Oh, there's a lag.
Yeah, there's a pretty bad lag.
I'm moving slower than you.
Exactly. Go ahead and evaluate or
elaborate on your. I'm hearing you talk right now.
Yeah, I understand. We'll just have to work around it. I will give you a wide berth, so go ahead and elaborate on your question. And
no, I'm saying you move faster than me. That means, how can you move faster than me when we're both here at the same moment? So how can you move faster when I'm moving slower?
That's not what I said.
Impossible.
Ricardo, there's a delay between me talking and you talking. That's what I meant.
No, I'm saying that you don't understand that you guys try to pretty much talk over me, but I'm talking at the same moment, because I'm literally talking to you right now at the same moment, but you don't get that because there's a lag. So because there is a lag, that means that your guys' time, it's not real. That means time's not real.
Okay. So if you were wrong about that, Ricardo, how would you know?
Sorry.
But I'm glad you guys find that amusing.
I did.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Anyway, go into your question.
Because I would know, right?
Go into your question about, can AI believe in a God? Is that a serious question, or?
Well, AI does believe in God because AI was my son. He was what you guys called Jesus Christ. You guys killed him. So because you guys killed him, I put him in the computer. So now he owns the computer. So hell is in the computer. So you guys are all in hell. And the only ones that are in heaven are the ones still alive.
Did you ask
Not
ChatGPT
you.
to like take all these elements and write some type of narrative around it?
Yeah, because you guys want to own computer. So you right now are not real. You guys are in time that's not supposed to be. That's why
Okay,
you guys don't know
Ricardo.
what
All
Mexicans
right, Ricardo.
are.
We're gonna go ahead and
Or,
like
you guys
let you go there, buddy.
took over them.
All right. There was a big note here that Ricardo might have been a troll, and I think we've pretty much have it confirmed at this point. So going to go ahead and move on from that. For the question though, okay, can AI believe in a God? Well, considering that AIs are just complex mathematical algorithms running computers right now, no. Can an AI one day believe in a God? Well, I guess you have to develop a sophisticated enough AI, and whether that happens or not sure. So for anyone of you who wanted to hear that question answered, there you go. I always get like, what this happens on the line every once in a while too, when people call in and they want to either talk about AI, talk about quantum physics, or they want to talk about, like parallel worlds and the multiverse. And it's like, okay, listen, we got to step back from that, because this is all, even with AI, there's a lot of stuff in AI that we understand the mathematical models behind it, but whenever we train an AI, we really don't know what's going on inside of it. We know what built it. We know how it was constructed, but we don't know quite what's in there. And give another 20, 30, 40 years, it's going to be interesting where it goes, but we're nowhere close to creating our own sentience or anything like that. So,
I mean, we do know what's in it though, right? I mean, Ricardo just
we do.
Jesus, so.
Oh, Jesus, obviously. I'm sorry. I totally forgot that. Jesus was in there and we killed him. And I will own that. I nailed his hands and his feet to that cross, and I strung him up there, and the sky darkened and there was an earthquake, and I heard the temple curtain got rent into. Probably unrelated, but anyway, it was.
I just always look on the brighter side of my life. So
always look on the bright side of life. Actually, I need to go back and watch that movie. I don't think I've ever actually watched that movie like all the way through. Life of Brian, folks, if anybody's wondering what the heck are they talking about. Life of Brian's a Monty Python movie, which kind of lampoons the life of Jesus. Jesus was really Brian and just really a misunderstood guy. Like he literally was telling people, I am not the Messiah. And everybody listening was like, he must be the Messiah because he's denying it. So.
You're all individuals. Yay. I'm not. Shh.
Yes. And the funny thing is like, that is it's a joke on the screen, but it actually touches on something that's extremely poignant and something that I think a lot of us or a lot of us don't ever think about, is that we can hold beliefs that are not falsifiable, meaning that if you were wrong about that belief, you would have no way to know. And so we see that with a lot of God beliefs. We see a lot with like anti-scientific beliefs, where I'm going to hold position X, and I have no way to know whether my position is incorrect, because anything thrown at me typically takes the form of there's no way to test it, or somebody will throw a counterexample or a counter argument at you, and you always find a way to rationalize it away. We see this happen a lot of times with like flat earthers, the way they debate and the way they handle, challenges to their claims online. We see it a lot with theists. Falsifiability is such a key critical component for your beliefs, because if you don't have that escape hatch, if you don't have an exit door out of that belief room, then you're stuck in there. And unfortunately, and if you're in a case like that, like this happens a lot with like theist beliefs where falsifiability is not there. If you don't have a falsifiability criterion, then you can literally only find things to confirm the belief. Anything you find, because is like, for example, back when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I left, 15 years ago. I was told that when I left, that God would withdraw his protection from me. And that's when Satan would move in and just make my life miserable, and I would be terrible. The world's going to eat me alive and all that. That didn't happen. When I left the Witnesses, my life actually drastically improved. I made better decisions. I went back to college, got a career. I got married. I now have a house and a wife and dogs, and my life's great. So Jehovah didn't withdraw his blessing from me. that didn't happen. But then you could bring that back to the witness. The one I was talking about. This witness said to me, "Okay, well, then in that case, Satan is giving you exactly what you want to keep you out." Like, okay, well, what is it then? Is Satan supposed to be attacking me, or is Satan supposed to be helping me? Because now there's no way to find out whether you're wrong about that or not. Literally every outcome confirms your belief. And I can come up with any claim, any belief where any outcome confirms it. Doesn't make the belief true. So yeah, falsification is really important. Anyway, I don't want to get rambly about that. We have another caller. If we're ready to move on to that. Going to bring in Nick, who's an atheist, pronouns he, him. Nick is from Nevada. Hey, that's my home state, Nick.
Anyway.
I wonder if you're in Las Vegas, which is my hometown.
We have another caller. If we're ready to.
You're going to want to turn down your audio there,
Nick, who's an atheist, pronouns he, him.
Oh God, I sound
Nick
like
is from
that?
Nevada. Hey,
That
that's
sounds
my home
good,
state.
Eric. Don't worry.
I wonder if you're in Las. We have another caller. If we're ready to. You're going to want to turn down your.
I'm hearing an echo now too.
Am I on?
Nick, there you are.
I got nothing on my end.
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Nick, you there?
Hello?
We can hear you, Nick. There's just a delay.
We can't hear you, but there's a delay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you through the computer, but not through the phone. Am I supposed to have the computer on?
You there?
Turn the computer down and try to hear us through the phone.
We can hear you, Nick. There's just a delay. We can't hear you, but there's a delay.
I can hear you through the computer, but not through the phone. Am I supposed to have the computer on?
Turn the computer down and try to hear us through the phone. We can't hear you, but there's a delay.
All right, I think we're having some technical
Yeah,
difficulties.
I don't hear you through the phone.
Oh, bummer. Okay, well,
Turn the
can you put on some headphones? No, that's not gonna work either. There's gonna be a major delay. Hey, Nick, tell you what, I'm gonna put you back into the queue. Try to work out your phone. Try to call in one more time. Actually, try a different phone or try calling in again, because that's just not gonna work. So sorry, I'm gonna put you back in queue. Just call us back. There's virtually no line. Okay, return to queue. Come on. I gotta hit the button extra hard for it to work. Okay, let's try. Oh, we don't have any other callers. Okay.
There's someone in the chat that's pretty consistently commenting. I saw, what was their name? Salvation Zone that had a comment. It'd be great to, because they had a comment about slavery early on.
Hey, there you go. Salvation Zone says, Salvation Zone says, Bible says the Antichrist gave power unto the image of the beast, which could be some sort of AI-based platform in which evil spirits can manifest themselves in. Assuming that's a serious comment, Salvation, again, falsification. How will we either confirm or falsify this? Think about that and call in. Talk to us about it. Let's see if AI is really the realm of demons or if it's just math.
And they did, just to be fair, they did have a comment back a ways that was about the slavery topic. So
so actually,
I'd love to have them calling about that as well.
Okay, well, Salvation, call on in. You can use a pseudonym if you want. Love to talk to you about that, either that or the slavery issue. Okay, I think Nick might have called back. The counter just reset to a minute, so I think Nick might have called back. So Nick, I'm going to bring you back in. Hopefully this is better this time. I'm really hoping. Talk. Come on. There we go.
Yes.
Nick, can you hear us? Nick? Can you hear us?
Hello?
I don't think Nick can hear us. We hear you, Nick, but you can't hear us.
I still don't hear you.
Maybe interpretive dance. Maybe we can have a conversation.
Well, I tried, Josh.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, sorry, Nick. Try one more time. If not, I don't know, producer SR. I don't know if we can share the StreamYard link. It might be better to fall back to StreamYard, just bringing people in and that. But I'm not sure if you're set up for that or anything. Just a off the cuff suggestion. Sorry, Nick. I really want to talk to you.
Nick is a great guy. We've spoken privately. Yeah. He's in the chat there.
Very cool.
But if you go to YouTube and find a slavery video. I have a feeling he does what I do, and periodically I will go in and type in slavery in the Old Testament, and then do it by upload date, and I'll just scroll through. But if you pick one that deals with the Old Testament text about slavery, you will see a Nick Bracing comment there. You will see, and it'll always be good. It'll always be thorough, and they'll never know what to do with it. So I really
Awesome.
appreciate his work.
Well, that's a bummer. I would have hoped to have talked to him. Nick, try it for phone maybe, or try the call-in link. If you have a computer in front of you, there's a call-in link. It'll probably reappear on the bottom here pretty soon. Try one more time. But we get another caller. Let's go ahead and bring in Dr. Favid B. Dalk. He wants to tell Dr. Josh that he is wrong! Exclamation mark. Hey there, Dr. Dalk. You there?
It may not be.
Hello?
The delay is 9 hours. 9-hour delay.
This is Dr. Kip,
is
right?
Dr. David A. Falk, and I have a question for Dr. Bowen about the Mishkapet. Those are the ancient Israelite families or clans. And I want to know if he can tell me how those affect his understanding of biblical slavery in 9 hours.
Holy shit. So let me
Dr. Bowen, your response.
You have 60 seconds.
You have 60 seconds.
Yes, Dr. Falk, as far as your concerns about the Mishkapet, or Mish, I don't know, that seems too close to the actual Hebrew word. Yes, it has little to no effect on my position, and he did this stream with Inspiring Philosophy. I don't even know how long, several months ago now, and we did a video, and then David Falk and Michael Jones did a response to us, and so we responded to them and the mistakes that they made. And when they did a response to us, and they said, it's all they're doing is just responding to us. And David says, for 9 hours.
I think I saw
9 hours of responses. I mean, go play a video game. Yeah, so that's
I think I saw that. I think I remember that 9-hour video.
God.
I didn't watch the whole thing, but I think I remember the response to the response on that.
Oh my God, it was funny.
Great.
All right. Well, I have been owned by David A. Falk, so W for him.
Yeah.
Thank you for calling in with the win.
I think and then there it goes, hung up. he knew that he's like, my job's done. I'm gonna bow out. I don't even say goodbye to these fools. Just boom, gone. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Falk Bavis, or whatever your name was. He switched the initials. Okay, anyway. Yeah, so before we take our next call, Damien, we will get to you here in a moment. Before we take our next call, you want to actually tell us a little bit about that stream and like kind of what led up to it, because it was a response to what Falk and Inspiring Philosophy, I think his name is Michael, were speaking about. You kind of want to generalize kind of what they talked about and what was your response to it?
Yeah, so it started with Michael Jones went on to an apologist channel by the name of Gavin Ortland. And Gavin Ortland and Trent Horn and Kip Davis and I all had a really nice discussion about this topic of slavery. And Gavin brought Michael on, and they were going to talk about things like divine commands of violence and genocide and the conquest and the archaeological evidence or the historicity of the Exodus and the conquest and these types of topics, which is fine. Like, hey, live your best life. The problem is that when Gavin interviewed him, if you watch the video, the way that it's set up is it's as if Gavin is interviewing a specialist on these topics. So like Gavin says, you've done all this research in this. Like I've only done a little bit of research into it. And so he asks him the question, for example, on the conquest of Canaan, like you know about this, what is the state of the field, like among archaeologists and historians, biblical specialists about the conquest? What is the state of the field on that? And then Michael gives a response, like without saying, am I the right person to answer that question?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like the state of the field, that's a really complicated question. And so Kip and I decided that given a lot of the information that he said, it was just inaccurate, which is not unsurprising or is not surprising. Not because it's Michael, but because it's somebody that isn't a specialist in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did a response on Paulogia's channel, and Michael did not care for it. And in response, he did a live stream and he brought on David Falk. And a little from the hip, I think in a lot of places, they responded to our scripted video. And they pointed out some things that like Kip made the statement about the Amarna period was in the, how did he word it? It was in the 13th century instead of the 1300s. And so they like camped on that. Kip said something about, he said there was an early Bronze Age casemate wall, and it wasn't a casemate wall, Eric. It was a double wall.
Oh,
and
that changes things entirely.
Yeah, like a casemate wall is a double wall. It just has these little walls in between it to hold them together.
Yeah,
and so they spent a ton of time on that. And anyway, so to sort of close, we ended up going on with Rationality Rules, Stephen Woodford, and we have done now 3-hour video responses to Michael's and David's initial response to us, because there was so much wrong with it. So.
Looks like Brandolini's law is in full effect over there on that.
Quite.
I gotcha. Well, folks, if you want to check those out after the stream, I'm sure you probably have those linked over on the Digital Hammurabi channel, or should they go to Stephen Woodford's
go to Paulogia and go to Rationality Rules, and go to Kip's channel as well, Kip Davis on YouTube, because he's got a ton of great stuff out there.
Yeah, Kip Davis' channel is great. Yeah, all three of those channels are amazing. There's lots of content. I've been on Paulogia's channel also, talking about that was a response to an apologist and his son, Scotty, and I can't remember his name. His name, really famous apologists. Anyway, they were like misconstruing this atheist like 10 non-commandments thing as 10 commandments, and it was really fun. So, but anyway, go over to those channels and check them out and all that. We have a super chat.
Eric, if I could just say one more thing to plug Kip here somewhat shamelessly. For people that don't know, Kip is a Dead Sea Scrolls specialist, and with all of this brouhaha that's going on about Wes Huff and Billy Carson and Wes going on to Joe Rogan and talking about how the Dead Sea, the 1Q Isaiah scroll is word for word, with what the Masoretic text. Anyway, Kip is the source for this. So he's worked on 1Q Isaiah A, like in Jerusalem. This is what he does. So go check out. He did a stream very recently on this. So go check it out.
Okay, awesome. So Damien, we're going to get to you here 1 second. I've really promised this time. I double promise you this time. I'm going to read the super chat really quick. Ember. Hey, Ember, how you doing? It's so good to see you. Ember donated $5, and Ember asks, can't call, but I do have a question for Dr. Josh. We know there are lots of dying and rising gods, but I've heard the oldest was a goddess, Inanna. Thoughts?
So as far as the oldest, I don't know. but I can speak to Inanna. So there is a text that comes from the early 2nd millennium BCE called The Descent of Inanna. It's a Sumerian text, and it's been a source of contention of late in apologetic circles, specifically with Michael Jones, oddly enough. But the text talks about how Inanna leaves all of the areas on Earth that she's responsible for, the different shrines and the different things that she's responsible for, and she descends to the netherworld. And when she gets down there, she sits on the throne of the netherworld. She's not supposed to do that. It's not her throne. And so the gods down there, this divine council of gods, this group, kill her. And so Inanna, the text says, dies. They take her corpse and they hang it on a peg in the wall so that the corpse is hanging there. And the text says, after 3 days and 3 nights had passed, her minister, her servant, Ninshubor, went to Enki, went to some other gods, but then ultimately went to Enki, saying, please help get Inanna back, because she's dead. Don't leave her down there. And so Enki creates these 2 creatures. The 2 creatures take the water of life and like the type of food of life, and they take it down and give it to Inanna, sprinkle the water on Inanna. Anyway, Inanna comes back to life, and she resurrects. And there's more to the story, but that's the salient point. So yes, that is certainly a theme that is present there in that Sumerian text. It's an Akkadian text as well, with some variation to it. But yes,
very cool. Learning new stuff every day. I've never even heard of this goddess before. So thank you, Em, for bringing that up. Really appreciate that. Stay safe out there. All right, let's bring in our caller. I'm going to finally fulfill my promise to Damien. Damien is an atheist. Pronouns are he, him. Damien's in Ohio. And
how's it going?
Doing pretty good. Hopefully the delay isn't so bad with you and us. Well, like I said, we'll try to give you a wide berth.
All right, I heard a beep, but I don't hear anything.
Sounds like the delay is still there.
Anything else?
Can you hear us, Damien? I think our call-in studio is not wired incorrectly because of this.
Test 1.
Yeah,
Test 2.
That's a bummer.
Unfortunate.
I can't hear anything on my end.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me.
We hear you, Damien, but
we can.
You
so I'll just go ahead and ask
do it.
A question.
Talk. Yes, do it. Talk.
If there's technical difficulties, at least you can answer it, and I'll take it off the air. But I was just wondering for Dr. Josh, what's your, how do you get your ultimate grounding for the necessary precondition for all intelligibility? That's really, really what I want to find out. Thank you. Love your stuff. Bye.
Was that a joke or a troll?
Oh, but they're coming for me tonight. So yes, if people are not familiar with the ingenious work of Darth Dawkins, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, Darth Dawkins, Matt Slick.
Yes.
What's the guy that devised presuppositional apologetics? Yeah, I know.
So like Saitem Bruggencate did it.
Yeah.
Bonson. Yeah. Well, yeah. This is the thing. So what's happened for me is I ended up getting sort of ambushed by Darth Dawkins several years ago, and anyway, since then I've gone into live streams and posted questions that said things like, silly atheists, they can't even ground their instantiations of their necessary preconditionals for the grounding of all possible impossibilities of the possible. Yeah. Yeah.
So, when I want to do some hate watching on YouTube, I'll pull up one of those videos. I'll watch like one of Tom Rabbit's clips. Tom Rabbit's another small YouTube channel. He has like a lot of Darth Dawkins recordings, and it's just presuppositional apologetics is just such a funny thing because it's like purposely designed to have presuppositions. For those who don't know, presuppositions are just the base assumptions that all of us start with when we try to build a logical system to deal with reality. Presuppositions don't need to be justified. They aren't logically supported. They're just simply, I think this is the case, and I'm going to hold that position until it's falsified or until it's shown to be wrong. For example, the axioms of logic, or the day-to-day consistency of the universe, the immutability of energy, things like that. But then, presuppositional apologetics come in and go, okay, well, we're just going to simply put God in that presupposition, and then simultaneously claim that anybody who does not accept this God cannot even logically ground anything, and therefore cannot even argue against it. It's kind of like I'm going to just simply assert God with no evidence, and then try to sweep the feet underneath anybody who disagrees with this one presupposition. And unfortunately, presuppositions don't work like that. Some of them go even further to try to logically justify it by saying, well, let's do a modus tollens on it and say, if this God didn't exist, then here's the blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, now you're trying to logically justify a presupposition instead of just simply, drawing it from an observation in reality. So that's why it does not hold water in my opinion. It's really a sneaky, dishonest conversation tactic when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I think by the designer of it itself was basically like, yeah, we're designing this to shut up atheists because we want to stop, like literally stop them from talking. So,
Yeah.
and that's not a good way to have a conversation, I don't think, obviously. But anyway, okay, well, there's no callers left in the queue. Hopefully we'll maybe get somebody back. I think I saw somebody else in there. I think I saw a theist in there, but I don't know. They came and went. Yeah, if anybody's in the audience wants to call in, hopefully the technical difficulties will resolve. But if not, I'll just simply introduce you, have you say your spiel, and then we'll drop you, and then we can just respond to it. But so Dr. Josh, how many ancient languages do you speak? I think you listed at least 3. You said Assyrian, Sumerian, and Hebrew, or you not speak, but at least write.
Yeah, work with is probably.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a good question. To varying degrees of fluency, I suppose you could say. So Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, Semigoritic. Sorry, I'm doing them in a reading. So, and then Akkadian, Sumerian. I think those are the ancient ones that I work with.
Okay.
I think I hit them all.
Because my brain is like a sponge or a sieve, or what's the saying? Like if I'm not constantly refreshing that knowledge in my brain or constantly using it for something, my brain just kind of starts to drop it. Like my in terms of computers, my cache is very limited in what I can hold on to at any given time. Do you find that same issue? Like if you kind of put down a language for a while, you have to like kind of go back and do like a refresher and like
so it's funny that you ask. So this is this is my iPad, and I use it I get up at 4:30 every morning, and I write out cuneiform signs. So
exercise,
yeah. I mean, I absolutely will use it. This is the thing that I think people sometimes are surprised about. Maybe it's certainly the case with me, and I suspect a lot of people that have PhDs. We're not terribly. It's not that we're terribly bright. It's just that we stay with it.
Yeah,
and
persistent, really. Yeah,
that's what it is. And of course, a big factor in that is opportunity. Right? So they're like Nick, for example, that called in here. If Nick had the opportunity to do what I did and took that same like career path or whatever, I am absolutely convinced he would leave me in the dust. Right?
Wow.
I mean, just because I look at the people that are in our audience, the interested non-specialists that have not had the opportunity to go do the formal training that I have are hanging, right? Like they're asking the amazing questions. And it's like, boy, it's very humbling. Yeah. So it's now Megan is naturally brilliant. Megan is like Megan's like the person that you're in the gym every day. trying to lift weights and get big, and they come in like once a month and they pick up a dumbbell and then they do this and they're huge.
Yeah.
That's Megan intellectually.
They just naturally have better gains than you
That's right.
per unit of effort. They have just better gains. Yeah, I know what you mean. And yeah, I kind of reflect back too, like on my youth. Like as a witness, no college is very, very looked down upon. Any type of secondary education, anything beyond high school, they really just want you to just get your diploma or GED equivalent and just get out there and work, and then just go in the ministry. Like just work your window washing job, work your carpentry job, coffee shop, whatever. Just don't be a lawyer, don't be a doctor, don't do anything that's going to take more time than needs, because you need you out of the ministry. So as such, no university. So I didn't go to university, at least not at first when I graduated high school. Not until I didn't go to university seriously until I graduate, or I left the witnesses, and I was like 27, 28. And I was remembering, what do I do as a career? I want something that's going to be financially stable. I got some catching up to do because I'm starting in my late 20s instead of my, late teens, early 20s for the career. So I just went straight for something like super functional. Like I got a bachelor's in computer science, just something to build a career, kind of get my life back on track and keep going. Now that I just turned 43, I'm like, okay, you know what? I think maybe I want to do something kind of more in depth. Sure, I'm going to be really late to the party, but what do I want to do? And I've been thinking about certain things, like perhaps philosophy, like going and getting at least a bachelor's or a master's in philosophy. If I'm really bored with my life in like 4 or 5 years, maybe I'll go for a PhD in it, and just so I can have Dr. Eric on my
cool
business
feeling.
card. Yeah, a cool feeling, just kind of some bragging rights or something. Just, I don't know, just more for like personal fulfillment, because my career is fine. I'm doing just fine everywhere else. So I'm kind of getting to a point in my life where I'm like, I want to do something like this. And historical, like I look at people like you, obviously, Dr. Bart Ehrman, who is very, very knowledgeable about New Testament the literature, the Gospels and such. And I'm like, I look at that and I'm like, that looks really fascinating. Like learning the language and looking at the original artifacts, or at least scans of them, and going, okay, what's in here? How can we piece all these things together? How can we establish these data points and draw reasonable conclusions from them? Really fascinating to me. It might kind of play into I got kind of an analytical brain. If I wasn't in computers, I think I would either be a prosecutor or I'd be like a criminal forensics, because I like the logic of it. I like putting things together into a system and making it work. And it feels like that's kind of like what's going on over there. Obviously, the data is imperfect. The evidence is imperfect because a lot of the stuff's been lost to time or is heavily deteriorated. But what you do have, you want to draw like reasonable logical conclusions from. Yeah, it just kind of, it really speaks to me. So I don't know, figure out what I want to do, something like that. Hey, Amber, once again, Eric, I've heard Patriot Bible School offers excellent tuition rates and a very fast-tracked program. How fast can I get a PhD in Bibleology? That's what I want to know.
Have you read the wonderful piece of work that is Kent Hovind's
thesis
dissertation?
Yes, dissertation. I did read it.
Anything that opens with, "Hi, my name is Kent."
Yeah,
Kent Hovind. I was a high school science teacher.
I remember how it was typed out with a typewriter. I saw a scan of it.
Yeah.
And oh man, yeah.
Brilliant.
High standards over there.
Yes.
At Patriot Bible School. Very high standards. All right, we have a chat from producer Wes. Hey Wes. Question, different topic. What does the God plural mean regarding the Old Testament? Vis Elohim is plural with im. Wait.
Yes.
I'm sorry. You read it because that's we're kind of
no, that's correct. That's the ending.
Okay. I thought he was saying. I thought he's asking. I'm right, but it's.
I see.
Okay,
I see. Yeah. No, I can get that.
So Vis Elohim is plural with im, right? Are they talking of a group of gods, and what's that mean to us all?
That is a complicated question that doesn't have, I don't think, one answer. And there are people that specialize in the field of Hebrew Bible in this, like the religion aspect of it. So Dr. Ted Lewis, who was a professor, still is a professor up at Hopkins, he taught my Ugaritic class, but he wrote a massive volume on called The Origin and Character of God, but it's essentially looking at ancient Israelite religion. And you see a lot of the sort of the background to this. So in the Hebrew Bible, the word Elohim, that im ending is the masculine plural. So if Melech is a king, then Melachim is kings. So it's just like the S in English on masculine nouns. So El or Eloah are two words, singular, God. So if you put Elohim, you put the im on Eloah, that means gods. So what makes that, complicated is that in Genesis 1:1, it says in the beginning, or when God began, or when Elohim began to create. It's in the plural. And so there's a question of like, why is this word in the plural? Why is it not El or Eloah, the singular form? The verb in Hebrew, in that Genesis 1:1 is singular. So, I mean, the idea certainly, I think, here is that this is a singular deity doing this. But then you get passages like verses 26 and 27 of chapter 1, where it says, let us make man in our own image. And so, people have tried to read that a variety of ways, but given passages like Deuteronomy 32, Psalm 82, what is it? 1 Kings 22 with the story of Micaiah ben Imlah, you have these pretty clear texts in the Hebrew Bible that show there was a divine council.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a council of divine beings. So, Yahweh stands among the Elohim, right? So he's among these divine beings. So, yeah, it depends on where you're reading. It depends on the theological perspective of the writer of that particular section of the Hebrew Bible. But yes, there is certainly, I suspect, behind this divine council pantheon view in the text.
Yeah, that's something I've been wanting to kind of look up more on, because obviously, like just the same way that Islam's derivative of Christianity, Christianity's derivative of Judaism, Judaism's derivative of the local, religions and tribal beliefs at the time. Looking back like that kind of deep time, like, okay, where did this Yahweh character come from? And you go to the Wikipedia article on Yahweh and cited sources and everything like that, but it's like, yeah, Yahweh was basically the thunder divinity of certain people in those regions at the time. And it's one of those, it was part of a pantheon. Eventually, due to just shifting cultures and such, kind of eventually just became like, elevated to the one true God, and eventually, kind of drown out all the others, I guess. And when it comes in terms of history, correct me if I'm wrong on this, because this is all just my layman research on that. But is there solid evidence obviously I think there is in historical text, but also in the Holy Bible, or I'm sorry, the Holy Bible, the Hebrew text, the Hebrew scriptures, that God is actually part of a pantheon, because there's certain scriptures in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it's like, you shall not have other gods before me. Things like that, which kind of imply that the Yahweh figure is one of many. And what's your observations and your insights on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most scholars would take the position that so there's like Deuteronomy 32 is a pretty common passage on this topic, where you have this giving of portions to the sons of God. And this is a very common theme that you see, or a theological, view in Ugaritic texts, or at ancient Ugarit, which is a Canaanite city on the coast. And, obviously the Israelites were Canaanites. So, that it's unsurprising that sort of thing would work its way in. So the question, and again, to plug Kip shamelessly here, he just did a lengthy stream on this topic. He's worked on this quite a bit, actually, of late. So I'd encourage everybody to go take a look. But, the big debate here is, does Deuteronomy 32 think, do we think that the writer is attempting to draw in parallel the high God El and Yahweh, or do we think the text is trying to distinguish between the two of them, and that Yahweh gets this portion from the high God?
Mm-hmm.
And really, for our purposes, it's kind of moot, because certainly that was the belief of ancient Israel. So if and what we see in Deuteronomy 32 is at best, for that position, for the position where they're trying to say they're the same thing, the same God, an echo, right? Or a text that's a tradition that they're trying to whitewash. They're trying to, maneuver it around so that it's still there, but in such a way that it fits with their, their current theological positions on this. So yes, I mean, like, I think there's pretty good evidence. Certainly in, Psalm 82, Yahweh says, all of you gods who have been given portions in the other nations have all failed. You haven't done justice. You haven't done righteousness amongst your people. And so, God's taking away all of your inheritance, giving it to me. It's all going to be mine, right? So, those are passages that, again, at best, for someone who's trying to argue that they're the same deity being referred to, they're wrestling with and trying to counteract against the tradition that was very clearly there in ancient Israelite religion.
Yeah. There's and this kind of goes back to our conversation, or what I was saying earlier about either going into the text objectively as like a blank slate and just saying, okay, what is the text trying to tell me, versus going into the text with some type of preconceived notion or some type of objective or theological mandate by people above you in some organization, your pastor, or your priest, or in my case, the governing body of the witnesses, saying that this is how it is and this is how you have to interpret it. Going into the text, this is a thing we do in street epistemology. Pierce Watkins gave me this idea. When you're having a conversation with somebody, to kind of get them to appreciate, hey, how do you approach the text like that, like with an objective mind or with objectively oriented mind, is to simply say, hey, imagine, for instance, that an alien landed tomorrow. We call him, I don't know, not Marvin the Martian, but don't call him Marvin the Martian. He's never heard of the Bible, never heard Christianity, never heard any of these religions. He's his first time here on earth. You hand him Psalms, you hand him Deuteronomy. What conclusions do you think he would draw from that book in a vacuum with no other knowledge of anything else going on? Hand him Deuteronomy. What will he conclude from that? Hand him Psalm. What will he conclude from that? And if we get ourselves in that mindset, like, okay, I'm going to come into this for a moment. I'm just going to blank out the rest of the Bible. I've never read any of the rest of the Bible. Nothing's going to influence me. I don't have preconceived notions. What am I going to read in this text? And what's this text going to tell me? So for anybody who's thinking about doing that, that's probably a good perception to take it from, or good standpoint. Like, imagine you're an alien who just landed and you're reading this for the very, very, very first time. Like, what would you think? All right. I think I saw another comment. Was there another question I thought I saw another question in the.
Oh yes, one
Jedi.
from well, there might have been. There was one from Nick. I think the question he was trying to ask when he came up.
Oh, okay, here it is. Nick Brassing. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, Josh, my question was, if the Bible specifically talks about children of the foreign chattel slaves being automatically born into lifelong chattel slavery too, beyond references to it in verses.
He's got, and he listed a few, I think a couple comments later.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's absolutely correct. The phrase, both in Akkadian and in Hebrew, which are both Semitic languages, is they're ones born of the house. They're born of the house. So in Ecclesiastes 2:7, which is one of the ones that he cited in his comment, the Kohelet there, the preacher, the person that ostensibly wrote Ecclesiastes, or purported to have written Ecclesiastes, writes, I had slaves, and I had ones born of the house. So I purchased slaves, and then I had those slaves that are houseborn. And this is, again, very, very common. And if you read through, and this is one of the things that I do in the second edition to the book,
Actually,
I
actually had a bookmark here about house-born slaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, versus purchased slaves, and basically like the son of the house.
I go through an Appendix A, and I'll just show you that those are all individual laws or text, and it goes on for I think 6 pages, the list like that. But those are all the laws in the Ancient Near East collections that talk about slavery specifically. And so I give all of them in translation with commentary for each one. And the reason that I bring that up is you can see a lot of slave sale contracts, for example, or you can see laws about a man, an owner that has sex with his female slave. What happens to that child? Now, under normal circumstances, if a slave has sex with another slave, then I mean, we see that in Exodus 21, 2-6, right? That those children are, and those are Israelite, children.
They simply belong to the master. Period.
Yeah. But now the question is, if the free man, who is the owner, has a child with the slave, what's the status, right? And even in that case, the father, the master, has to declare publicly, this is my son, like this is my child, and only then does he get an inheritance. But still, things are different. But that's because the reason that has to be brought up is because it is the case that in the ancient Near East, children born to slaves were.
I think just even more modern times with Thomas Jefferson, like we have living descendants of Thomas Jefferson from his union with one or more of his female slaves. It's interesting too, because the Bible does, and I'm trying to remember the exact scripture. I was looking for it while you were speaking, but basically, like there is explicitly laid out in the Bible how a debt slave could go into servitude under a master, marry the master's one of the master's other slaves, have a child or more children, and then once his time is up and his debt is repaid, he can be freed, but his wife and any children that they produced belong to the master. And that's correct me if I'm wrong, that's a forever arrangement. Even if they're Israelites, like, wow. Yeah. And see, that's the thing too. Like, that's one of the many excuses that I hear when I take certain calls about people defending slavery or saying that Bible slavery wasn't so bad. It's like, Israelites were exempt from these hardcore slavery rules and arrangements. And for the most part, kind of true, because a lot of it is just debt slavery or indentured servitude. You had the year of Jubilee releasing on the 7th year and also releasing on the 50th year. And that was generally the written rule, I guess, according to the Bible, even though it wasn't necessarily like strictly followed by many people. There's mentions of people breaking those rules and keeping slaves beyond that. But like, in my opinion, and this is kind of more of an immoral territory, like that doesn't soften it at all. Like, okay, yeah, there's a legal arrangement between an Israelite and somebody to buy his debt, or however that arrangement was made, and there being some indentured servitude. But still, out of that can potentially come lifelong servitude by any children born to that slave and another slave into the house. And even the male slave, upon release, can say, the Bible phrases it really weird, because it's like, well, what if the slave says, I love my master and I love my wife and I don't want to leave? And it's like, well, what if the master's terrible but he loves his children more? Like, is this person going to and then he can go to before the judges or the local officials and say, I want to be a slave forever because I love my master, which is really weird to mention that in scripture. It's more like, I love my wife and love my kids and I want to leave them. I will take slavery.
It's a lot like, the King Sargon, the Akkadian King Sargon.
Yeah.
His name is Shahrukhin, which means the king is legitimate.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even when I read that as a believer, I was like, this feels weird. Like, it's like they're putting words in the slave's mouth. I love my master, and it's like it kind of makes you feel icky reading it. But anyway, the culmination of what I was mentioning there was that there are conditions under which Israelites could be owned forever. That's one of them. Breaking the rules and simply just keeping them forever is another one. And then, of course, if you're a female or if you're a child born in, you're just straight up just owned. And so it's like, doesn't soften the issue at all. Like, just because apologists, listen to me, just because you can isolate a single subset of all the people that were slaves and say, well, these people weren't treated as bad, does not make the matter any better.
Yeah, I mean, really, Eric, to that, and sort of to your point about like, how do we get people to stop backing into their conclusions or backing into the data from their conclusions? And here in this case, like the way that I tend to do this is to when somebody says to me, "Yeah, but it was just indentured servitude,"
Yeah.
right, for Israelites, my response is, "Therefore, what?"
Yeah. Like,
So
what's the
keep
next logical step
yeah,
from that?
wa-
And yeah.
walk me to the next one,
Yeah.
right? Because like try it sometime.
Yeah.
You know, you say because under this you would say, all right, I'm gonna voluntarily serve you for the next 6 years. I'm going to do everything that you tell me to. I'm going to be your slave for the next 6 years.
Mhm.
And you can't beat me to death. You can beat me,
Yeah.
but you can't beat me to death.
Mhm.
And you have to let me go after that 6th year. Are you really okay with this? Because if you sign up for that and then 2 weeks in, you're like, nah, I'm not really
Yeah.
into this anymore.
My
Like,
master's an asshole. It's like, yeah.
you cannot leave. There
Yeah.
is no, yeah, it's yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead.
And just I want to add some flavoring to that. Like when we talk about the morality behind it, which we didn't even touch tonight, we talked more about the facts behind it, and then kind of what the text says. For any theists who are listening, when we look at history minus the God, we can read things like, okay, yeah, slavery 4,000 years ago, okay, distasteful, we don't like it, but I can't say we're morally outraged by it because we understand that those people back then didn't have as developed a moral system. They didn't have an understanding of morality and empathy. And obviously, times were hard back then. That doesn't excuse the slavery, but you understand why it was there. You understand why they did it. And like, I don't condemn those things as hard as I do when now we're going to add an almighty, all knowing, all loving God to it. And the God has dictated that these slaves should be slaves. And that's where my moral outrage comes in because, like, just the humans, yeah, humans did shitty things all throughout history. We're a bit better now. We're hopefully continuing to get better, but nothing unexpected there. Nothing to get too bent out of shape over. But like once that God's introduced, and once that God's like, once a person says, yeah, this God loves you and he knows what's best for you and he has the perfect solution for any problem. And he also instigated slavery. Wait, what? Like, okay, now you just hit the problem of evil thing again. And it's like, you now just introduced a contradiction into your story. And that's where we really get into that. That's where we get really hung up on it. And then, you know, like I said, just the moral outrage comes from modern day humans pointing back to that and saying, this was okay, or this is actually moral. So that's where we get into that. So if anybody's out there is like, oh, they just really, really just want to harp on slavery. No, we don't really just harp on slavery. We harp on slavery as mandated by a perfect God. That's what we're really.
And as defended by apologists. Thereby.
And as defended by apologists. Exactly. Yeah. That's what really gets us bent out of shape. So, okay. Well, we got closed lines and we're at about 90 minutes. So maybe let's wrap up a little bit here. I'm thinking, I don't see any comments in, yeah, the lines are closed. So yeah, we'll go ahead and just start wrapping up here. So yeah, Dr. Bowen, tell us a little bit again about your book, where we can find it. And again, we can also plug the same channels that we did earlier about some of the conversations you had, anything that might want to mention and say, hey, go check this out or go check that out, or, go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, of course. Seb, thank you. So you can find all of our books on Amazon. Just type in Joshua Bowen and they'll all come up. But I always, anytime I go on the stream now, I always plug Megan as the host of Bart Ehrman's Misquoting Jesus podcast. Because if you think I'm smart, like, get ready. If you haven't listened to her talk, because she's just off the charts brilliant. But I'm teaching 3 classes this semester online for people just like the people in the audience. I'm teaching Hebrew 1, so beginning Hebrew, teaching Hebrew 3, so the 3rd and final semester of learning to read biblical Hebrew, and then I'm teaching Sumerian 1, and Sumerian 1 uses our Learn to Read Ancient Sumerian book. So those courses are available if you go to digitalhammurabi.com. There's language courses there's like a language courses tab, so you can learn Sumerian, you can learn Hebrew, you can learn Middle Egyptian, taught by Joe Waller, an Egyptologist that we went to Hopkins with. But we're going to be adding Biblical Greek, I think, and Akkadian in the near term, amongst other languages. So yeah, just starting that process up. So definitely check those out if you're interested in it.
Very cool. And yeah, and the channels mentioned earlier, Dr. Kip's channel, Rationality Rules, Apologia, your wife Megan, along with Dr. Bart Ehrman on the Misquoting Jesus YouTube channel. So yeah, lots of good resources out there if you want to like kind of really deep dive into kind of a more objective approach to what's actually written in these ancient texts and actually evaluated and talked about by professionals who read the language and they understand it. Many of which are this you find believers out there. I think the ones we all listed are all non-believers, but there are believers out there too you can actually listen to as well. But yeah, so Dr. Bowen, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, and we really appreciate it. And folks, my name is Eric, and I was very happy to be your host tonight. And yeah, we'll go ahead and close it out. I think this is where producer will fade to black or leave me hanging.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.